Okay, let's try this again. Welcome to Forking Off, the podcast for people who said no to just following orders, where we explore the very personal decisions behind leaving federal service, whether by choice or by force. Every departure has a story, and we're here to share them.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Forking Off. I'm Jill Fields.
And I'm Philip Fields.
And today, it's January 20th, 2026. It's been 1 year since Trump's second administration began. It's been quite a year, huh, Philip?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a year of upheaval. It's been a year of a lot of change. So today, we're going to look back at that change, how the changes came about so quickly, why we should have seen all of this coming, and how we can be prepared for the next year.
Or three.
But today is actually going to be our season finale for season 1.
So season 2 will be kicking off around the end of February. If you haven't subscribed to our blog, go ahead and do that, and you'll get notified when the next episode is ready. We've got some good guests lined up, but we're still looking for a couple of more. If any former feds out there want to let us know, or if anybody's been affected by the past year's change in policies, we'd love to talk to you as well.
Yeah, and stay tuned. After our closing credits, we will have a couple of our bloopers, a couple of mishaps from our recording this year.
Hello.
Oh, and speaking of mishaps, here's our son. You want to say anything else?
No thanks. I just wanted to say hello.
Have
fun.
All right. Thanks, kiddo. All right. Philip, anything else you wanted to say before we start our first round of clips from this year?
No, let's
Kick it off.
Get it over with.
The executive order came out and said that this was somehow a grave national injustice and that the pardons would begin a process of reconciliation. And when we think about reconciliation, we don't think about sweeping a problem under a rug and ignoring it. It's not usually what that means.
As I've been asked, when did you know this was different? And it was day one, January 20th, and there's sweeping pardons for January 6th defendants. There was a complete role reversal where it was, we will acquit the guilty and condemn the innocent. That is not justice.
You've heard the analogy before when you put a frog into cold water and then start to turn on the heat, the frog's going to sit in that water and basically just boil to death. But if you put a frog into boiling water, it will jump out immediately. And I think that analogy works with why I made the choice to leave, because there were small things that you slowly started to notice, or at least I started to notice, happen right around 45's entry.
We all read Project 2025, and we knew that USAID was going to be kind of like a test case for how to dismantle the federal government, and the entire agency was decimated by Elon Musk. I remember I wrote in my journal, I was like, democracy died today.
Yeah. So that first 2, 3, 4 weeks, that was a whirlwind. It was wild. They came prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I listen back to those clips, it's really interesting to me the different perspectives that people had going into this administration. I mean, even between you and I, we recognized what was going on at different points in time. And some people were fully expecting it, and others were like, nah, we'll make it. I think by the end of January 20th, everybody knew what was coming, though.
Yeah, I mean, the pardons were the big thing, but day one, there were 26 executive orders. And at the end of 2025, there were 225, I believe. 225 executive orders. People talk about legislating from the bench, talking about the courts trying to push through legislation that way. Now, this is legislation
From the Oval Office.
Yeah, from the Oval Office. So I think when you listen to Christina and she's talking about the frog analogy, the first administration, we were in the cold water. But this time, fire's on, water's boiling.
Yeah, I think people are starting to feel the heat.
Yeah.
So I think that this would be a good time to talk some about normalcy bias. I've talked about it a lot this past year. I just want to make sure that we're highlighting how people can realize when it starts to warm up, because that's that idea. It's this cognitive bias. It's a tendency to underestimate the possibility of disaster. It's this belief that life will go on as it has because it has, even in the face of significant threats. It's that idea that, well, no, he won't actually invade Venezuela and kidnap their president. He won't actually drop bombs on fishing boats in the Caribbean.
He won't actually send military into our communities.
He won't actually send the military to take over Greenland.
Yeah. We as Americans have, Philip, you said it the other day, like we have this American exceptionalism mindset of we're the best at democracy. And so everyone just has this assumption that America can't fall, it can't falter. I mean, that's kind of why we were blind to 9/11 happening. To speak in some intel analyst language, like we really need to be doing some key assumption checks. We need to be questioning what happens when our assumption is wrong. When we keep thinking they won't do that.
And I think back to right after the invasion of Venezuela, just a few weeks ago, when Marco Rubio was giving a press statement.
Yes.
And he said something to the effect of, when Donald Trump tells you he's going to do something, he means it. There are plenty of examples of him threatening tariffs and everything and chickening out, but
when it's come to violence, you really have to.
This is something that I used to tell my coworkers all the time at the FBI. When a terrorist tells you they're going to commit a heinous act of violence, you need to take them seriously. And when Donald Trump tells you that he's going to use the United States government to commit a heinous act of violence, you need to take him seriously.
Absolutely.
I talked a little bit about normalcy bias. There's this almost subset we talk about in more of an individual capacity, the bystander effect. We think about that as somebody's dying on the street and everybody just walks past and doesn't step in to help because they have that dissonance going on.
They assume somebody else is taking care of it. It's like when you see an accident on the highway and you're like, oh, I don't need to call highway patrol because somebody else has already done that.
Right. The more people there are watching this event, the more people there are watching what is happening to America, there's this diffusion of responsibility. Everybody expects that somebody else is going to be the one to step in. Nobody's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves.
Yeah, so nobody's coming to save us.
Right. Looking forward in 2026 and beyond, we're going to continue to experience these cognitive shocks. This shock to our conscience, this rapid normalization of deviance that we've been seeing. We have to push back on that. We have to social proof society. We have to find a way to counter that normative shift, because the more this happens, the more normalized it becomes, and the harder it is to recognize it and the harder it is to stop it.
I want to mention, like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, but the courts will stop it. Here's the thing. The courts have put down orders saying, okay, you can't do this. Oh, you can't do that. And they've been ignored. I mean, the courts aren't able to fully hold them accountable because they're being ignored.
I just want to put a really fine point on what I mean when I say we have to social proof our society. We have a tendency as organized groups of people to emulate the behavior and the norms of those around us. And as that behavior shifts, our behavior shifts with it. That's what I mean. We have to push back against that.
Yeah. So it does go back to that whole, we've all assumed that everything's normal. Everything's going to stay normal. And we're like, oh, well, they won't do that. Well, they won't do that.
Speaking of, well, they won't do that.
It was just a series of, well, they won't do that. Well, they won't do that. Whatever that was, they did. I've gone through like 6 or 7 administration changes. Never seen anything like this. The closest I could kind of come up with was reading about McCarthyism. And it's funny, my wife's German, so she would talk about, yeah, we've been through this before. I think we call it the Stasi.
And I remember when someone came back and said there had been several arrests of undocumented immigrants. The question raised, did they have any criminal records? And they were like, not to my knowledge. And there's just the audible gasp in the room because we're all like, what are we doing? To essentially relinquish the power that we have to undermine justice, I can't be part of that. We do not serve at the pleasure of the White House. We serve the American people.
That line between White House and DOJ had been obliterated. It didn't matter that there should be a separation. There was not going to be. If you have a politician telling you who to charge, which is what's happening, there is no integrity in the system. That's not real justice. We are really on the verge of becoming Russia right now. And that sounds like hyperbole, but sadly, you have to look at it through the lens of reality in order to understand just how true it is.
If you are a grantee and you call your EPA contact and they never call you back, you start to panic. And so you call your congressperson. They call EPA, and the person they called at EPA was me. So I was being told to essentially stonewall and lie to members of Congress. And so it became a choice between, do I keep my job or do I keep my voice? And I chose to keep my voice. Well, the administrator himself said I was an example of the kind of employee who, and I'm going to use air quotes, makes his job more difficult. And my immediate response was, good, because my job's been really difficult.
Andrew said it best, like, our jobs became so difficult.
So forking difficult.
So forking difficult. No, I mean, and it became impossible to do our jobs in the way that our jobs were meant to be done. But that was part of what the administration was working on. They were changing our mindset. They were bombarding us with changes so that we couldn't keep up, which meant that everything was changing so fast.
Yeah, and that's by design, right?
Right.
I remember very vividly still, I was talking with a group of other former coworkers shortly after I had made the decision to leave. I was trying to open their eyes to this shift that was taking place across American society, not just in the government, but what was coming. And I got a lot of pushback because it sounds irrational. It sounds unbelievable when you try and equate what is going on there to this old German term that I can't pronounce, but Gleichschaltung.
Yeah.
It's this word that didn't even really exist in German dictionaries before the Third Reich. And it's this idea of synchronization and coordination across all of German society. It's the same idea that we're seeing currently with the Trump administration. It's this synchronization and coordination to implement this system of totalitarian control. It's not just the government. It's trade, it's the economy, it's our cultural institutions, it's our educational institutions, it's our media outlets, it's everything.
It sounds alarmist when you hear it because we've been in this mindset of, oh, we're free, there's this democracy and we're American. And so it sounds so shocking. And then you start looking at everything. I mean, you're right, Philip. They were going after the media. They were going after businesses. They were threatening to pull funding from educational institutions.
And then telling us all it's not what we think it is and that we're being irrational. It is, in modern terms, industrialized gaslighting.
Yeah.
It's this erosion of reality. We've talked about with you, with several people now, this idea that we're all in this emotionally abusive relationship. Even to say just emotionally isn't an accurate characterization anymore. We are in an abusive relationship with our government. Over time, it creates this sense of learned helplessness if we don't push back. If we just continue to take it and we conform to it, we lose our ability to actually break out of it.
I remember back when all of the immigration push started coming, I was complaining to somebody like, oh my gosh, this is just wild. Like, this isn't what we do. And I remember them saying to me, well, I mean, get used to it. We got 4 years of this. And I was like, no. No, we don't. No, we're not. This is not something we get used to. This is something we need to start on the front end saying, whoa, what are we doing? This is not okay. But I mean, that dichotomy of thought, well, you have to because that's who's in power right now. No. My oath still stands. I still uphold the Constitution. I still protect the American people. I don't have an oath to one man. I have an oath to the Constitution and the people.
And I'd like to give people a kind of example of the gaslighting that they should be expecting in this coming year and what they should be watching for and how they can recognize it and stop it. I think a lot of people are picking up on this, but when we see protesters in the streets and when they are, well, I'll use the word antagonizing ICE, they're yelling at them, they're telling them, we don't want you here. That is First Amendment protected activity. That is your right as an American citizen to tell your government that you think that what they're doing is wrong. But when you then start seeing the administration describe that as terroristic threats, threats of terrorism, calling them domestic terrorists, there's a tool that you can use that the Supreme Court has set out for us when there's a threat. It's called the Brandenburg test. We'll include some information about it in the show notes, but it's a two-pronged test. It comes down to really, is that speech or expression directed to incite or produce, this is important, imminent lawless action? And if it's not, then it doesn't pass the test. But even if their intent might be to produce that type of imminent lawless action, is it likely to induce or produce such action? If those two factors aren't met, that's not a threat. They can't do anything about it. Standing in the street and saying we don't like ICE is not a violation of any law.
I hesitate to say this, but George Orwell has a quote, and it says, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." If you are seeing something and you are seeing an action happen, and then you have someone tell you that what you saw is not true. Yes, we do live in a day of AI and AI generated images. So you need to question what's going on and you need to do your own research. But don't just automatically believe, or if something seems so outrageous and it completely contradicts every eyewitness account,
I'd encourage people to go beyond doing their own research because that's how we got QAnon.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Don't do that. Don't do that. Never mind. Don't listen to me.
No. You're right, though. People need to look past those initial claims and those initial refutations. They need to find trustworthy institutions and organizations and voices who they can rely on to answer that question of, what should I be deriving from this?
I think what I especially realized in working for the county and seeing how very much, especially during 45 and then now as 47, the immediate impact that a decision that he makes instantly flows its way down into the field is really upsetting, because I believe in our checks and balances. I believe in how our government works.
And frankly, being on the outside, like watching what's happening now with the Bureau is so gut-wrenching. I also think that what we're seeing right now happen with the intelligence community is almost a deprecation of what is going to be available to the private sector. I have lots of private sector colleagues who rely heavily on annual threat assessments that come out. And if they start to question whether or not those documents are valid, or if those are going to be done at all, what are they going to do? How are they going to fill that void? And a lot of it is going to sit with all the federal employees who are coming out into the private sector, and just how valuable their body of knowledge is. Intelligence analysts are today's unicorn.
So what I wanted to do with my business was try to rebuild and reinvent what we are doing in violence prevention so that it doesn't rely completely on the government. Because violence does not end when the government ignores it. In fact, it is currently getting worse. It's on us now to take that and to try to do something else with it, because that was a gift while it lasted, and they're counting on us, whether they know it or not.
You had, within a couple of months, literally hundreds of organizations around the country who were relying on funding from EPA to do their jobs and to pay their people and to help their communities, who no longer had access to their money and whose calls to EPA were not being answered.
It's also just been really hard having the skill set that I have and watching the last few months of politics, political violence in America and divisiveness and these things. Being a stability expert, we're in a very unstable situation economically. I've studied enough economics in fragile states to know that economic shocks are a coming. They're like, what's your plan? I'm like, our plan is to survive.
Intellectual property supports about 8 trillion of the gross domestic product of the United States. So numbers matter and truth matters. So let's talk truth. First of all, where I've been able to summarize anything with respect to what has happened over the last 9 months is the stated goals do not match the reality of the consequences of their actions. And anytime messaging is about solving something, it's actually a crisis that they created that they now need to resolve.
That's a lot to unpack, Philip.
Yeah, this is a big one. There's a lot here.
Yeah, like Nikki said, there's a deprecation in the intelligence community and what's going to be available there. And that's so true. And that hits on multiple aspects of our society. But I mean, Molly's talking about like we're losing money. It is an economic impact to lose everything that the government has lost this year. I think the statistic is 318,000 employees left federal service last year. And it's normally between, what'd we say, 100 and
150,000.
And that's like for retirements usually. Or no, that's retirements and
resignations across the entire government, not concentrated in specific agencies that are being targeted.
Right. And normally people are being hired to replace those. Nobody's being hired to replace. Like USAID, gone. We talked to Alan Dinkoff, and he mentioned 600,000 deaths worldwide. 400,000 of those were children because of the shuttering of USAID.
Yeah, and I think the projection that he cited in the coming years was something like 14 million people around the world.
Right. Like, it's not just these jobs were cut. People are suffering. Sarah Degu, she was working on massive projects with DHS, with Homeland Security on violence prevention.
Yeah, that deprecation of the intelligence community, it's not just the intelligence community. It's reverberating throughout the entire U.S. government. It's filtering down to state and local governments. Like Christina mentioned, it's impacting people everywhere. Like Madeline said, we know how this goes. We've seen it in other countries before. It can happen here. It is happening here. I want to go back to something you said earlier. I may have been a little too critical of doing your own research. I do want people to do their own research, but I also want people to, as Mr. Rogers put it, find the helpers. One of the things right now that I think we hit on a lot here, Molly said, these are crises that they've created that they now need to solve. That type of situation where they come to us, present us with this crisis that requires this extreme act to fix, that is what we call deception. And that we have tools to try and detect that type of deception and to counter that type of misinformation. But I want to emphasize that even the best intelligence analysts in the IC have a very hard time doing deception detection well. And I want to talk about why. Because good deception doesn't leave behind evidence. If somebody does deception well, you'll never see it. But bad deception calls into question all of the facts, all of the evidence. It makes it hard for us to determine what is real and what is not. And there are some tools that we can use. We need to decide, does this person have the motive, the opportunity, and the means to deceive us?
The MOM, the mom.
Yeah. Mom, Pop, Moses, and Eve, right? These are the tools. People can look these up on their own. I won't beat them too hard. But mom, motive, opportunities, and means to deceive. Does the U.S. government have that? Yeah. But past opposition practices, Pop, does the Trump administration have a history of deceiving the American public? Maybe. Okay, now we need to really start paying attention. Moses, should we be concerned about the manipulability of sources? Are these sources reliable? Sources who talk to us, humans giving us their opinion, are less reliable than tangible facts, material facts. We need to look for things beyond just what we're told. Maybe video evidence that circulates on the internet when the government tells us that that's not actually what happened. And the last one is Eve. We need to learn from the evaluation of evidence, and not just the evidence that we have, but the evidence that we don't have. Are there things that we don't have access to that could tell us the answer here?
Yeah. Looking at that, especially the Eve, like looking at the evidence, look at DOJ, look at the Department of Justice and the brain drain there with the firings of attorneys who brought the January 6th cases, the firing of attorneys who would not go after political rivals, the resignations. Those are huge. They were looking at the evidence that was presented to them, and as attorneys, as experts in looking at evidence to present cases, they said no. This does not meet the threshold, and refused to compromise themselves. And losing that type of discernment within our government puts the American people at risk. We have already seen cases be thrown out because they're not meeting that threshold that they need to meet. This is a concern that things are probably being done incorrectly, and not just within the Department of Justice.
Yeah, it's a hollowing out of our foundations, and it calls into question the economic stability of the United States, and that can have profound impacts around the globe. But also in the way that they're fired, that's another absence of evidence. In normal times, there would be a process to remove an employee, to allow them to challenge their removal, and to actually bring evidence. None of that is there, so none of that can be questioned. We're just expected to believe that they all deserved it.
They all deserved it. And we've had people say, well, oh, they should file whistleblower complaints. They should do this. Look, Philip, I know. I mean, tell them your experience real quick.
No, I'm not going to go into it, but the whistleblower process is broken. It barely worked before. To expect that an inspector general who works for Pam Bondi is going to be the one who comes in and save us, that is not living in our current reality.
Yeah. So, Philip, how do we get out of the pit of despair? How do we move on?
Probably a lot of us are trying to figure out, like, what do all these skills that I accumulated, what do they mean in the real world? And where do I go from here? And how do I leverage those skills in any facet of life, but especially in this time? Like, don't suffer in silence, don't suffer alone. Like, it's a trying time, but I think we kind of all do better when we're working together.
I can't believe I'm 36 years old and they're like, what is your plan? I'm like, my plan is to start a YouTube channel, and I don't really have a plan after that. I'm just embracing the young side because I don't know. I feel like I've been a little, I don't know, betrayed might be too strong a word. Definitely let down by the advice of the elders.
To speak it into existence, I truly am trying to, or I'm going to, start a social movement, a cultural revolution, if you will, to make civic engagement part of people's everyday life. I really want to make this a lifestyle because I myself realized that I was able to turn my despair into action. And then once I did, I started to have a lot more agency over my life again. It gave me hope.
All the stories that were wiped away from USAID should be captured in a way that's truthful and honest, and like in a way that's honoring like the 6 decades of service that people have dedicated into this. And it was so incredibly powerful. On opening night, I was like sitting on this piano bench and watching people perceive my art. And there were so many people that just stood in front of my paintings and cried. And I've never experienced anything like that.
By me resigning, we were able to take our children out of daycare, and I was able to stay home with them. So that's $5,000 a month that we're not paying in childcare, and I'm able to spend more time with the kids and get a business going too. I'm so thankful to be where I'm at right now.
I love the resilience and the positivity that we've seen. Looking back on everything, it's very easy to get into that cycle. Oh no, everything is terrible. Everything's falling apart. Oh, it's the pit of despair. But we don't have to be stuck there. I love Brian's story. Like, he knew it was time to resign, and he found the positive in that of, okay, we're going to be saving money on childcare. He's getting to spend time, be at home with his 3 kids, but start this business, which is a dream of his, since childhood, he has loved collecting baseball cards and trading cards. And here he is now starting this great business. And he's bringing joy to so many people. I mean, people are finding ways. Mike Johnson, he's going back to school. He's getting a master's degree. And he's supporting veterans. He's mentoring veterans. There's so much. People are finding their way through this. They're finding ways to give back. That is the public servant heart right there.
Yeah, and we've sort of hit on now, Sarah Digio talked about it. We've got to rebuild these services for society from the outside in now. When I thought about that, I thought about, okay, that's hard. That's a lot. Like, there's a lot that I don't know about how the rest of the world works outside of my intelligence background. What tools can I use to help me do that? And I want to throw in another one here. It's a way to reset our mindset and address these problems. It's called outside-in thinking. It is a way of considering all of the forces that exist outside of our expertise and how they might shape the issues that we're going to have to address. But how do we do that? There are a lot of different acronyms here, even just for all of the same things. But if you want to Google one, you can Google Stimples Plus or PEST or STEEP or PESTLE, Steeple, it doesn't matter. The idea here is that we need to think about all of the social factors, the technological factors, the economic factors, military, political, legal, environmental, security, psychological, demographics, ethics, morals. These are important ones. How those impact our ability to process the information environment and to make plans and make sure that those plans are going to set us up for success. Because what I see from a lot of corporate America right now is they're ignoring things like the political factors and the military factors and the security factors. They're very focused on the economic factors. Just because our economy is ignoring the problem right now doesn't mean a year from now it's going to be able to. As we're working through our resilience and building our civic fitness, we need to be considering all of these factors.
Absolutely. We do need to be considering these factors. And if you want to talk about like impact and seeing an actual impact, people making the change. When the FTC chairman threatened Jimmy Kimmel and threatened his show, he was put on a temporary leave. He was basically put on admin leave, like a lot of us were. People pushed back. They canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions. They made a point of saying something. That shows you the power that we have because he was back the next week.
Yeah, the courts didn't do that. Congress didn't do that. Governors didn't do that. People did that.
Yes, people did that. That really puts it into perspective. Anna said it really well. She put her despair into action. It wasn't great, huge, giant leaps. It was small things. Anna has her social media presence. She's Anna Fired Fed on Instagram and on TikTok. And she puts out videos that show small ways that you can make an impact in your community. And that's really where we have to start, is within our communities. Anna's also started a podcast called Left in the Attic. Go check it out. It's great. It's her and one of her old colleagues, Steve. So check it out. But she's showing ways to make a difference. Even if it's a small difference, it makes a difference. And you never know who is watching you and who is watching your action. You can be that light and you can be that inspiration.
And there are so many more examples like that. There's former Feds and Friends that Madeline is working on.
Yes.
It's an amazing way to use fiction to make people think about how these things affect society and how we can process them and how we can come through. Jordan is doing the Fed Up, and she's helping people write about their experience and learn how to speak about what it is that they've gone through and building community.
I mean, we can keep going. I mean, Allie and her artwork, check it out. It's amazing.
From the American people.
Oh, gosh, it is gorgeous. Molly, she is not in public service now. She's back in private practice, but she is helping people.
Yeah, we interviewed 3 different attorneys from 3 very different fields, and all of them are now taking their skills and experience out into the legal profession to help people make it through this time.
Oh, yes, yes. The list goes on. Patty's volunteering with NARF and doing therapy visits with her dog.
And I don't want to leave anybody out. John Cordell's book, Letters to Myself.
Oh, yeah.
John is doing amazing advocacy work for people in the military.
Go back and listen to his episode. If you haven't listened to it or you've listened to it before, listen to it, because what we are losing there with our military and with force readiness and their safety.
The amount of our resources that we're consolidating in the Caribbean when we have threats growing around the globe, there's just so much to talk about there.
There's so much.
When all these changes started happening and I started seeing a little alarm bells, it was kind of like, am I crazy? There aren't any metaphysical guardrails that are just going to protect America. The guardrails are us. I just knew for me, I was not going to wait around until I really got in that position where it was like, are you willing to break the law?
I just want to say to others who are out there who may be still feeling that they are alone in this, you're not crazy. Things are bad. There is a lot of, destruction that is happening right now. But I also think there's a lot of us that still deeply care.
Authoritarianism thrives on our silence. It thrives on our fear. It thrives on our silence. And so if we could all find what we can, but it's going to take us to have to take some risk. It's not always going to be comfortable. Creating a community of folks who are doing the same thing, that's what's needed right now. Like, I really, really believe that.
And I believe that if more people took civic actions on a consistent basis, we would build more community, strengthen our democracy, and honestly help people improve their mental health in a time where a lot of us feel very helpless and hopeless and scared, to be honest.
Sarah Hernandez, not Sarah Digu, but Sarah, she mentioned there aren't any metaphysical guardrails. Those guardrails were gone. We are the guardrails, and we have a responsibility as Americans to be those guardrails. You see something wrong, say something. Don't be afraid to say something when something is wrong. Don't be pushed into a corner and think that you can't speak up. You can. And speaking up can be so simple. Anna mentioned it in her episode with us. It can be as simple as liking a post on social media, reposting something, making a comment somewhere, because somebody may see that you commented on it and they're like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to like that. It's okay for me to do that. When we went to that dinner, Philip, somebody said to us, oh, I'm so afraid to like anything or say anything these days. There's got to be somebody out there doing something. And we were like, no, you need to do something. If you don't like it, do something.
Yeah, it's everybody's responsibility to do something. I keep saying this, nobody's coming to save us.
Nobody is coming to save us. But I also want to push out, be kind. Be kind to others. I know, it's tense.
That's hard.
It is hard. It's so hard. But this is something Philip, right now, this is not an us versus them situation. We're America. We are one. We are a melting pot of all types of different cultures. We can all believe different things, and that's okay. But we can't be violent against each other. We need to have a future. We need to have a tomorrow, and we need to find some common ground.
Yeah, now's the time to find allies, and that's not just in our neighbors and our coworkers. That's with our local police departments, with our state police departments, with our local government officials. Those are the kind of people that we're going to need to help us in the coming year, in the coming 3 years, because those are the people who can actually step in and help us. So I want to make a case for, as Jordan said so eloquently, now is the time, people. Wake up.
Yeah.
Wake the fork up. But seriously, now's the time for people to wake up, shake off their biases, weigh the facts, question the claims, get civically fit, challenge authority, resist conformity, and demand accountability from our government. Now is the time for all of that.
Absolutely. There is something I do want to address here. I had a friend who was talking about our closing to listeners still in government, remember your integrity is worth more than your TSP. Keep your ethics, keep your dignity, and we'll keep telling these stories. That's not a call out saying that people that have stayed in government service shouldn't be there. No, that means if you're there, remember your oath and remember why you're there.
Yeah. And we're not just talking to people who aren't in government. We're talking to everyone. It is everyone's responsibility to do the right thing and to stand up when something is wrong. So yeah, that closing, that's not lip service to one side. That's not a jab at the other side. That is a reminder to do the right things for the right reasons. And if you're struggling to remember what those are, come on out and join us.
Yeah, give us a call. So Philip, we went through 2025.
We did.
We're now in 2026.
We are.
What can we expect to see this year? What are some things we could possibly see or things that we should be looking for?
Throughout 2026, we're going to have to continue to check our biases. We're going to have to continue to watch for that normalcy bias. We're going to have to continue to try not to be the bystander who doesn't step in. We're going to have to rebuild all of our institutions. We're going to have to continue to monitor for and try and identify and counter deceptive practices. We need to be watching for things that right now sound outrageous. We need to be watching what is happening in Greenland and making sure if our government tries to do the wrong thing that we're ready to step in. We need to go back to when Russia invaded Ukraine and think about how the United States countered Russia's offensive there. We could have done a lot more, but the main thing that we did do is we called Russia out every step of the way in no uncertain terms. There was no tone policing about what Russia was doing. We were saying, no, that is wrong. And that's what everybody needs to be doing right now. We need to be saying, no, invading Venezuela was wrong. Capturing the president of another country, whether we like him or not, is wrong. Invading Greenland, threatening Greenland, that is wrong.
Threatening the American people that they have to carry citizenship papers with them at all times and be ready to present them, that is wrong.
America was founded on the idea that we would take the tired, the weak, the wretched, and the poor from everywhere and give them a place to live. That is what America is. That is what it means to be an American. Anything that is contrary to that is wrong.
Yeah.
And on a somewhat lighter note,
we put together a little clip of some of our favorite quotes from this first season.
Maybe a little less fascism.
I remember I wrote in my journal, I was like, democracy died today.
I feel like I've said that so many times this year. Democracy died today. And you always say to me, no, Jill, it's been dead.
R.I.P.
So now's the time, people. Wake the up.
I mean, that's it. That is the message for 2026.
Yeah. So 2025, there was a lot that was torn down. There's a lot that's been destroyed, broken. 2026, it's time for us to come together and we're rebuilding and we're building a community. And I hope that you stay with us for season 2. We got some great people coming that are going to be talking about how we can rebuild and what they're doing to rebuild in their communities. Thanks so much for forking off with us this season.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Forking Off. To our listeners still in government, remember, your integrity is worth more than your TSP. Leaving doesn't mean giving up on public service. It just means finding new ways to serve.
Until next time,
keep your ethics,
keep your dignity,
and we'll keep telling these stories.
If you're a former Fed with a story to tell, or you're wrestling with your own ethical crossroads, reach out to us at info@forkingoff.com.
Today's episode was created, produced, and edited by Jill and Philip Fields. You can find more information about this episode at forkingoff.com. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks so much for joining us this season.
We hope you'll join us next time.
And now, a word from our sponsors. This podcast was fueled by wine and cheese.
This podcast was brought to you by Uncle Sam's Tears.
This podcast was brought to you by hate and vitriol. Vitriol, it's what fuels us all.
This podcast was brought to you by hate and vitriol. Vitriol, it's what plants want. This podcast was brought to you by Brondo. Brondo, it's what plants want. This podcast was brought to you by A Mother's Disapproval.
This podcast was brought to you because my therapist said I needed an outlet for my feelings.
This podcast was brought to you by the letter F and the letter U.
This podcast was brought to you by my anxiety because I can't afford to pay for therapy anymore. This podcast was funded by our deferred resignation.
This podcast was brought to you by my child's college fund. He'll figure it out.
I'm glad he's smart. Are you broken? Did we break you?
No, I was just thinking.
This podcast was brought to you because it's cheaper than therapy.
Are we done?
Blah. All right, I'm done.
Thanks for forking off.